Hi everyone, it's Laura here, and this video is part 1 of a mini-series in which I'm going to share with you how I created a sunset scene entirely with alcohol markers. I asked on Instagram if people preferred that I shared one unique longer video or two smaller short videos, and the split option seemed to be the slight favorite. So this video here will share how I created the background and how I did my stamping. And there will be a second video showing the coloring, which will be live soon. I started my card by stamping images from the Magical Dragons and the Up in the Air stamp sets by My Favorite Things. I'm using some Grout Grey ink, also by My Favorite Things, because I want to be doing some no-line coloring. I created some masks using some repositionable packaging labels. I first masked off the area where the basket of the hot air balloon is so that I could stamp part of the body of the little dragon. I then masked the little dragon too, and then I went ahead and stamped the entire hot air balloon. And the result in the end is that the little dragon looks like he's actually sitting in the balloon. I also created masks for all the images and I adhered them on top of the stamped images on my card base, and this is because I'm going to start from my background and I didn't want to worry about going around the images with my marker strokes. So I followed some tutorials by Taffleberry Lane, she's really great actually, and I saw that that's what she was doing and that's what I did too. This is actually my very first card of this type, so I had to study a little bit before going ahead and creating it. The reason why I am taping my card base on a cutting board using some painter's tape is that I'm going to use my markers from the outside of the cards towards the inside. You will see it in a little bit, and I didn't want the edge of the paper to ruin the tips of my markers, so I thought that using some painter's tape would help, and this is also something that I saw Antonia Florence from Taffleberry Lane do. I masked off the area where I will have the sea and also where the sun will be using again some repositionable packaging labels, and to die cut the circle for the sun I used a die by My Favorite Things. It's a happy birthday circle die, and I will have all the products that I used in the description box down below if you're interested. And now it's time to start coloring the scene, and I started from the sky. I'm going to first color in the sky and then the ocean, and as a last step I'm going to color my images. The reason why I decided to go in this order is that, as I said, this was my first card of this kind and I didn't want to invest too much time coloring the images and maybe end up with a background that I didn't like. So I first started from the things that were a little bit newer to me, and then I moved to the more comfortable parts of the coloring. For the sky, I wanted to get a nice gradient from a light pink to a more intense purple, so I started coloring those areas. First, basically just filling the areas in, and I'm leaving some white spaces for where I want the clouds to be. The clouds, I'm going to tell you from now, were probably the most challenging part of this drawing. Or rather the coloring for today, so this is something that I definitely need to practice. But going back to the sky, as you can see, I'm basically just filling in sections with progressively darker markers, and I'm trying to blend them together so that the gradient is smooth. So if you follow me on Instagram or on Facebook or on my blog, so on any other of my social media platforms pretty much, you'll have seen this card already, as I created it for the My Favorite Things Card Design Superstar contest. I also had a little game going on Instagram where I asked people to thumbs up the image on my feed if they wanted to see a video tutorial, and that I would have released this video tutorial if enough people had shown interest in it. I have to admit that I didn't quite get to the number of likes that I had set as a goal, but I decided to share the video anyway. First of all, because I just enjoy sharing my card making journey with you guys here on YouTube. This was something really new for me, and I was excited to show it to you. And also because I received a lot of sweet messages on Instagram from people asking me to please show the video, so I really, there was no real reason not to do it. Anyway, back to the card. As you can see, I just kept going back and forth with my markers, trying to blend them together and get this gradient effect. And then I moved on and started coloring the sun. I am showing the marker caps on screen right now, but as I go along with the coloring, I kind of get into the zone, so I start forgetting to do so. But I will have a color chart for you. The color chart will list all the markers that I used to create today's card and will be linked in the description box down below. I will upload the color chart on my blog and you can go there to check it out. You can save it to your Pinterest boards for reference if that helps. And also I wanted to let you know, in case you missed out on the announcement that I made, that I have a new newsletter service and I'm using that to share blog updates, also new releases and crafty deals that I find online. So if you are interested in staying up to date with all my content, because I don't share all my cards here on YouTube, there's actually a lot of cards that I only share on my blog or on my Instagram, then you might want to check the link in the description box down below and subscribe to my newsletter. As for the coloring of the sun, there wasn't anything really special. I am making sure to keep the edges darker and the center lighter and to follow the shape with my blending so that the sun appears nice and rounded. And then I moved on and started coloring the ocean. At first I was going to basically draw in the water ripples, and this is what I'm doing right now with my lighter marker. I'm going to use some teal blues for the ocean, as I really like this color and I thought they would complement really nicely the color palette that I have on the sky. As for the waves, as you can see, I was kind of trying to draw them in a way, but then I started feeling a little bit confused, to be honest, as to how to exactly shade the individual waves. So I made the executive decision of not actually going in so much detail in coloring the waves, but to actually just create some flicking motions with my markers, and that the flicks themselves would be enough to convey the texture of the water and the waves. And I think that in the end it worked out pretty well. I am leaving the area just under the sun almost untouched because there will be the reflection from the sun in the water and I wanted to have enough space there to basically add some yellows and oranges to reproduce this reflection. And as you can see, I am using darker and darker markers as I move away from the center of the scene, so away from the light source that in this case is the sun. Here I am going in with a light yellow marker to add some strokes and create that reflection. And as you see, I'm going back and trying to darken up the edges. And I'm going to do this at every step pretty much of this coloring process. And this is because, as I said, this was the first time that I did this. So I tried to proceed with a little bit of caution, putting down the colors and then, having again a look at the whole scene and making adjustments as I needed. So I will later on darken up the sky a little bit more and the ocean as well. But at this point, I decided to stop and start trying to render the clouds. As I said, this was quite challenging for me to do. I started to try and create a little bit of texture and structure within the clouds themselves, but I wasn't liking the result very much. To be completely honest, I wasn't exactly sure how to go about this. I had watched a few videos on YouTube on how to color a cloudy sky with alcohol markers, which I never mentioned. The markers I'm using are Illustrator markers by Spectrum Noir and are alcohol based. So I had been watching a few videos, but at the time where I was supposed to actually go in and color my clouds, as I said, I was struggling a little bit. The general method that I used was to first color the sky around the clouds, and then I'm going now back in with the dark purple marker to start intensifying the contrast between the sky and the clouds themselves. I'm going to use some lighter purples and pinks inside the clouds to create, some sort of a puffy, fluffy texture of the clouds themselves, and I'm always going to use my colorless blender to blend those areas towards white. I'm also going back in and adjusting other areas of the scene. As I mentioned, as you go along with the coloring, you figure out how the different elements look next to each other, and you can go ahead and make the necessary adjustments. And also it helps whenever you're tackling something that's a little bit difficult or that might be getting frustrating or you just feel stuck on it. It helps to move on and do something else that you're more comfortable with. And this is why I took a little break from the clouds and I moved on and fixed the ocean a little bit or added a little bit more detail to it. And then I went back to the clouds. I also realized that I needed to add a little bit of yellow and orange because there would be some reflected light from the sun, whereas up to this point I was only shading them with purples and pinks that were basically the colors that I have on the sky. So I went back in with my light yellow markers and added a few highlights, mostly at the bottom of the clouds. And then at this point I could go ahead, remove my masks and start coloring the images. As I said at the beginning of the video, this is part 1 of a mini series of 2 videos, so make sure to check out part 2 if you're interested in seeing how I colored the images. You will find a link to the second video in the description box down below and also on the end screen of this video. If you enjoyed what you've seen so far, make sure to give this video a thumbs up and leave a comment in the description box down below, letting me know if you've ever tried to make a card entirely with your markers, be it alcohol markers or watercolor markers. If you haven't already, you can subscribe to my channel for more card making and paper crafting inspiration. And as always, thank you all so much for stopping by and have a great day.